My stepson smirked. You should be grateful to even attend my wedding. I canceled the venue, booked a trip with friends, and left town. The empty chair said everything. I was standing in the backyard when he said it. Not loudly, not with malice, just enough to let it land and stay there. You should be grateful you're even invited. Justin, my stepson, tall like his father, confident in the way only the ungrateful are. He didn't even wait for me to react. Just said it and walked off toward the rented bar, laughing with his groomsmen like he hadn't just pulled the last thread in a rope that's been fraying for years. And me? I just stood there, surrounded by the warm glow of string lights I paid for, staring at the drapes I rented, listening to the band I'd booked rehearse a song I didn't request. I must have looked like part of the staff, or worse, like someone loitering at an event he barely belonged to. There's a kind of silence that comes after years of swallowing your pride. It's not peaceful. It's tight, sour. It lives in your stomach and your chest and behind your eyes. It makes your jaw ache. That's where I was that evening. Silent, but not serene. My name's Rob. I'm 49. I married Meg 6 years ago. She has 2 kids from her first marriage, Justin and his sister Kayla. And I say kids, even though they were practically grown when I came into the picture. Justin was already 19 when Meg and I got serious. He was polite at first, distant, formal, never once called me dad. Not that I expected it, but never called me anything else either. I was just the guy. I didn't mind. Not at first. I figured he needed time. Maybe he was protective of his mother. Maybe he was loyal to his father, who'd skip town the minute Justin graduated high school. I told myself this was normal. I was the new variable in their broken formula. The outsider. The backup. But time didn't soften things. Calcified them. He started referring to me as Mom's husband when introducing me to others. He'd say it like a joke, like a subtle jab wrapped in a smile. Oh yeah, that's Rob. He's married to my mom. Like I was the contractor who came with the house. Not family. Not even close. Still, I showed up. I worked. I supported. I stepped in wherever Meg asked, and many places where she didn't. College textbooks? Paid for. Car insurance? Covered. His first condo? Co-signed. No fanfare. No demands. I didn't even ask for thanks. I just wanted to help. I thought helping would build something. That maybe he'd see me for who I was. Not his father, but something stable. Something good. That illusion shattered the day I overheard him tell a friend. My real dad would have actually shown up, not just thrown money at it. I was standing outside his condo, dropping off a new tire after he called Meg in a panic. His voice came through the slightly open window. He laughed when he said it like it was a punchline. His friend laughed too. I didn't go inside. I left the tire on the porch and walked back to my truck. That was the first time I felt the resentment curdle. The first time I imagined the ledger in my head. 2 columns. What I'd given and what I'd received. Let me tell you, those columns don't balance. The wedding was supposed to be a chance to set things right. A fresh chapter. Meg convinced me it would be different. That Justin was older now. That things had changed. She said, "You've been there through everything, Rob. He knows that." But I don't think he did. From the start, I felt it. That subtle distancing. Every email from the wedding planner came to Meg. Never me. Every decision. Flowers, food, venue, music, was made with his fiancé's family. I wasn't even asked what kind of wine I preferred, and I was footing the damn bill. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't notice, but because I thought, maybe, just maybe, my presence would speak for itself. Maybe my seat at the front would be enough. A signal. A small gesture of acknowledgement. After all, that's what we hope for, isn't it? Some kind of nod that we mattered. That our sacrifices weren't invisible. Instead, I was told I'd be seated at the 3rd table, near the outer edge of the reception tent. Not next to Meg. Not next to Justin. Not even near Kayla. No. I'd be sitting with people I didn't know, near the outdoor heaters, surrounded by guests I'd barely met. When I asked why, the coordinator, some frazzled 20-something with a headset, shrugged and said, That's just where you're listed, as a respected guest. I asked her to clarify. She scrolled through her clipboard. You're not in the family section, but Justin wanted to make sure you were included. You're at table 3, same as his dad, actually. I stared at her. I'm sitting with his father? She blinked. Yes, that's what Justin requested. That's when I felt it. The wind knocked clean out of me. I walked away from her without another word. I found Justin standing by the dessert table, chatting with his groomsmen. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I just stepped close and asked, "You really want me sitting next to the man who didn't spend a single cent on this wedding?" He smirked. God, that smirk. "You should be grateful you're invited at all," he said. "Some people just don't fit." And then he turned his back to me. That was it. That was the moment. All the years of tolerance, the quiet acceptance, the silent contributions, they crashed into that single second like glass dropped on tile. I'd been humiliated, not publicly but deeply, personally, deliberately. He didn't just move me to the edge of the wedding. He moved me to the edge of the family. And what did Meg say? Nothing. Not during the rehearsal. Not when I sat in the back during the speeches. A beer in my hand and a seat number clipped to my lapel like a brand. She smiled at me across the tent once. Just once. A brief look. Not guilt. Not sadness. Just neutrality. Like she didn't want to cause waves. Like my silence was part of the design. That night, I lay in our guest room, the one they'd stuck us in since the main rooms were taken by wedding party. I stared at the ceiling and imagined myself in the photos that would last a lifetime, me, in the background. Always the background. That's when the decision came. Not out of anger. Not even hurt. Just clarity. I was done being grateful for scraps I paid for. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, the sky over Sedona cracked open with that peculiar kind of desert brightness. Blinding, empty, theatrical. Everything was too loud, too exposed. The air was brittle, and the heat already pushing toward triple digits. I sat alone in the hotel room, watching the fan spin above me like it was counting down to something inevitable. Meg was in the bridal suite, helping Justin's fiancée steam her dress. I'd offered to help with the table settings earlier. She told me they had it covered. They always did. It had been like this since we arrived. Meg orbiting Justin's world like a borrowed moon, smiling, appeasing, agreeing. I watched her laugh at jokes I wasn't included in. I watched her nod when her son talked over me. I told myself this was for him, his moment, his day. But you know what I realized? When it's never your day, when it's always someone else's, you start to disappear. The rehearsal dinner was held at the bride's family's ranch house. A wide, expensive-looking property perched above red clay cliffs, the kind that exist only for events and taxes. The driveway curved so long it might as well have been a moat. By the time I parked and walked to the front patio, the other guests were already deep in their wine, their laughter, their polite conversation. I moved through the evening like a hired hand. I poured drinks. I helped carry folding chairs when the wind knocked a few over. I offered to troubleshoot the portable PA system when it crackled. No one asked me to sit down. Not even Meg. An hour in, a young guy in a black polo and clipboard, the same coordinator from the night before, found me near the buffet. "Hey, Rob?" Justin asked for a quick adjustment. I wiped my hands on a cocktail napkin. "Adjustment." He pointed at the seating chart on his tablet. He thought it'd be better if you were at table 5 now. Still a great spot. 5. I frowned. I was at table 3. He hesitated. Yeah, he just thought. It might make more sense. You'll be sitting next to Thomas. I stared at him. His father. He nodded. Yeah. My mouth went dry. I looked over at the arrangement. Table 5 was near the edge of the outdoor tent, half covered by a canopy that looked like it might collapse if the wind kicked up again. Table 5 was where they placed people who didn't have a real category. People who didn't belong. "You're sure he asked for this?" I said. The coordinator gave that neutral, professional shrug. "That's what we were told." And just like that, I was done. I found Justin standing near the fire pit with 2 of his college friends. I waited until he finished whatever story he was telling. Some exaggerated bit about a bar crawl in San Diego. I stepped close. Not aggressive, just present. You moved me. Again. He raised his brows, still smiling. Yeah. Next to your dad. The smile didn't break. Thought it'd be good. He asked about you, actually. I felt the first real stir of heat rise into my chest. So let me get this straight. I pay for your wedding, every inch of it. And you decide I should be seated with the man who walked out on your life? Justin's face darkened, just a flicker. But then came the smirk. The one that always curled at the edge of his mouth when he thought he'd won. You should be grateful you're even invited. There it was again. That sentence. Like a mantra. Like a final nail. Then he turned away from me. Didn't wait for a response. Didn't flinch. Just left me standing there. Alone in the middle of a party I funded. Surrounded by people who didn't know I was footing the tab. Who probably thought I was some distant uncle. Or worse, a vendor. I walked to the edge of the tent. Lit a cigarette. I don't even smoke, not really. But I kept one pack in my glove box for when silence wasn't enough. I watched the lights shimmer off the rented silverware. Watched the sky turn that deep desert mauve. Watched Meg across the lawn, laughing with the bride's mother. She didn't look my way. I took a long drag. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan in the hotel room, turning slow, methodical, indifferent. Meg was asleep beside me, her back turned. I lay there wondering what kind of man lets himself be this disposable. What kind of idiot signs checks with a smile while being erased from the very table he built. And I realized something. I wasn't part of this family. I was its bankroll. At 6:14 a.m. I got up, walked out of the room, and sat in the rental car with the engine running and my phone in my lap. The sky was still blue-black. The parking lot was empty. I made 3 calls. The first to the venue. Hi, this is Rob Mercer. I'm the one who placed the deposit for the Braddock wedding. A pause. Yes, Mr. Mercer. How can I help you? I'd like to cancel the remaining balance. I'm sorry. There was a change. Family emergency. We won't be proceeding. You can keep the deposit. Just cancel the rest. I gave the name, the date, the booking number. They confirmed. The silence on the other end said enough. The second call, catering. Same spiel. Same shock. They asked if I was sure. I said yes. The food wouldn't be needed. I let them keep the prep fee. Third call, an old friend from college. You still have that spare motorcycle? Yeah. Why? You remember that Nevada ride we always talked about? A pause. You serious? As a heart attack. 2 hours later, I was on my way to Phoenix Sky Harbor. Duffel bag in the trunk, boots on the passenger seat. I left a note for Meg on the hotel nightstand, penned in the thick, heavy strokes of a man who'd held back too long. It read, I don't show up where I'm barely tolerated. I go where I'm actually wanted. Tell your son the seat he offered me isn't needed. The chair's empty now. Let that speak louder than any toast. I didn't turn off my phone. I didn't throw it in the river like some dramatic movie exit. I just stopped answering. I let the messages pile up, first from Meg, then from Kayla, then from Justin himself. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. Out in Nevada, we rode through the desert until our phones lost signal. Until the sky was so wide it felt like it could carry the weight of everything I'd let go of. We drank whiskey under open stars. We told lies about the past, and none of them hurt. And when I thought of that empty chair, the one they'd scramble to fill or pretend didn't matter, I smiled. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was truth. Sometimes you don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes you just need to leave. I didn't hear the fallout in real time. I missed the ceremony, missed the faux laughter, missed the moment Meg realized my chair was empty. My tie wasn't knotted. My body wasn't sweating in the Arizona heat for a son who never wanted me there in the first place. Instead, I was 4 states away, watching the sun bleed over sand and stone. The silence of the desert didn't just fill me. It rewired me. There's a purity out there, a brutal kind. No cell towers. No small talk. Just wind and grit and the ache in your muscles when you ride too long without resting. It strips everything false out of you. I turned off my phone that first night under the stars. Let the messages stack like trash bags on a curb. I didn't want to hear their voices. Not until mine had returned. By the third day, I broke the silence. I turned the phone back on. 68 notifications. 33 missed calls. 12 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. I just scrolled. Quietly, detached. Reading the desperation in timestamps and tone. You embarrassed us. That was his big day. How could you do this to Meg? But the one that stopped me, stilled me, was the single-line message from Meg, sent 2 nights after the wedding. You left an empty seat beside me. That one cut. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. No, I'm sorry. No, I should have said something. No, he was out of line. Just you left an empty seat. As if the absence itself was the offense. As if my silence was louder than her complicity. When I finally picked up, it was early. Still dark in the desert. My buddies were asleep in tents behind me, and I sat on the edge of a cliff with coffee and no expectations. Meg's voice on the other end wasn't angry. It was tired. Why'd you do it, Rob? I didn't answer right away. I let her ask again. Why not just show up? Just for the day. You didn't have to like it. You could have toughed it out. I breathed in the cold air. Let it freeze my lungs before I spoke. Because I'm done being a placeholder. Done being furniture in someone else's life. You think that's what you are? No, Meg. I know it is. She sighed. Soft, brittle. He regrets it now. Then let him start with an apology, I said. Not to me, to himself. That ended the call. No shouting. No closure. Just static on the line as she hung up. I rode another 2 days before going home. Didn't rush. Didn't warn her. When I finally walked through the front door, the house looked the same, but it wasn't. There was a chill in the walls, like something had escaped during the storm and hadn't come back in. Meg was gone when I returned. A note said she was staying with Kayla for a while. No detail. No warmth. Just white paper and black ink. How fitting. I unpacked, made coffee, stared out the window at the backyard I'd built with my own hands. The grill, the stone pavers, the fence that kept no one in. All of it purchased, repaired, painted, cared for. All of it ignored. The next week passed in a fog. I worked, ate alone. I didn't hear from Meg. The phone stopped buzzing. Even the silence got bored of itself. Then the letter came. Not a text. Not an email. An envelope, hand-addressed, no return address, postmarked from Santa Fe. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Justin. I stared at the envelope for a full hour before I opened it. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part wanted to pretend it never came. But I read it. It was short, honest. Not quite an apology, but not avoidance either. It was the first time he'd ever written me anything that wasn't a dry thank you card or a Christmas signature. The words weren't elegant, but they were clean. Sincere in that awkward, stilted way that comes when pride still lingers in the corners. He started with the wedding, said it felt off, that the air was weird, that people kept asking about me, why the other dad wasn't there, that someone noticed my chair during the dinner, asked Meg why I hadn't stood for the blessing. I didn't know what to say, he wrote. I told them you had to work, that you were called away. But the truth is, it wasn't the same without you. He didn't apologize for the seating chart, didn't acknowledge the smirk. But there was something else near the end. A line I reread more than once. I've learned you can pay for an event, but you can't buy respect. And maybe you walked away not out of anger, but out of self-worth. I think I would have walked too. I folded the letter, set it on the table, didn't cry, didn't smile, just sat with it, let it settle. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was recognition. And sometimes that's the rarest currency of all. The next day, Meg came home. We didn't argue. We didn't embrace. We really talked for the first time in years. About boundaries. About silence. About the weight of expectations no one voices until they explode. I didn't know he'd said that, she told me. I swear. I thought you were okay. I nodded. You never asked. She didn't argue. We both knew the truth. I'd trained her in a way to expect quiet compliance, to expect me to swallow, to bend. And for the first time, I didn't. Meg's eyes stayed on her hands the whole time we talked. She wasn't angry. She was tired too. Tired of the space between us. Tired of pretending my name on the checks meant the family was complete. I didn't ask her to stay. She didn't ask me to move out. We just sat there, side by side, like survivors picking through wreckage. In the days that followed, the tone shifted. Justin didn't reach out again, not directly. But Kayla did. She called one afternoon. Said she was graduating. Said the ceremony was small, but she wanted me there. Not if you want. Not Mom said I should ask. Just, I want you there. That sentence undid more than any apology ever could. I went, sat in the second row, took photos, gave her a hug that didn't feel forced. And when she looked me in the eye and said, "Thanks for coming," I knew she meant more than the afternoon. She meant the years. She meant the presence. That night I walked home alone. Quiet streets, porch lights flickering, the smell of distant dinners through open windows. And for the first time in months I felt still, not happy, not healed, just still. You learn a lot in the quiet. You learn who notices your absence. You learn how loud an empty chair can be. You learn that love given freely but received without respect becomes something else, becomes transaction, becomes currency, becomes resentment, becomes a weight you carry in your spine until one day you decide to stand straight. And when you finally do, you realize how crooked you've been all along. I didn't come back to punish anyone. That's what people don't understand. When I left, it wasn't a power move. It wasn't vengeance. It was survival. I stopped showing up for people who looked straight through me. Meg and I spoke now and then. Neutral tones. Careful language. No demands. We circled each other like strangers in a room full of broken glass. One wrong move and everything would crack again. She asked once, "Are you going to keep being distant forever?" I told her, "I'm not being distant. I'm being clear." That's the difference. Before, I existed in the periphery. They called me when something broke. When someone needed to be driven to the airport. When tuition was due. When the heat went out or the account ran dry. Now, they didn't call. They hesitated. Because the rules had changed. Because they finally understood that I wasn't a vending machine with a heartbeat. I wasn't the invisible scaffolding propping up their carefully lit facade of family. I was a man. With limits. And the moment I started acting like one, the whole damn house shifted. I went back to work full-time, pulled back from the family finances. No more auto transfers. No more quietly covering gaps when the kid's father disappeared again. No more pretending that I was fine with being ignored, as long as I was included in the bill. Justin didn't reach out again. Not directly. Not with words. But I saw the ripple. Meg told me in passing that he and his wife were having issues. Said the financial strain was starting to wear them down. That he made some comment. Something like, "Rob always made it look easy." I didn't answer. Because it wasn't easy. It was just silent. There's a difference. There's always a difference. Kayla was the only one who saw me clearly. Maybe because she was younger. Maybe because she didn't build her identity around rejecting me like her brother did. Maybe because she remembered the small things, driving her to practice, staying up to help with essays, taking her to that midnight release of the last Harry Potter movie when her friends bailed. She remembered. So when her graduation came, she said it simply, "I want you there. No conditions. No apology. Just presence." I went, and she looked at me like I belonged there. Not because I paid. Not because I filled a gap. But because I had been steady. Real. A quiet anchor in a house that often drifted. After the ceremony, she hugged me for a long time. Said nothing. Just held on. I didn't need a speech. That moment meant more than any toast Justin ever gave. I walked home alone again that night. The streets were quieter this time. Warmer. Not because anything had been fixed, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. You can live with a broken family. What you can't live with is pretending it's not broken. I used to think love would fill the cracks. Now I know better. Love isn't enough. Love without respect is debt. It's a weight you carry until your spine bends, your voice dulls, and your sense of self shrinks into the corners of someone else's comfort. So I stopped carrying it. People say, but they're just kids. They're still learning. Sure, maybe, but I wasn't a child. I was a grown man being erased by teenagers, and a wife too afraid to say my name when it counted. And no one gets to tell me that endurance is the same as love. No one. I gave 6 years to that house. 6 years of late-night repairs, of tuition checks, of empty holidays where I sat quiet while someone else's father got the credit and I got the bill. And the moment I asked for a seat at the table, not even at the front, just somewhere visible, they told me I should be grateful. That word again. Grateful. Grateful to be allowed to exist. Grateful to pay, but not speak. Grateful to sit near the door, in case someone real arrived. Let me ask you this. Would you be grateful? Would you keep showing up for people who didn't see you? Would you write checks to a name they refused to give you? Would you stand next to a woman who won't stand up for you? Would you? Because I did. For years. And it got me a chair next to the man who walked out on them. It got me a smile across the room. It got me blamed when I finally walked away. But you know what else it got me? Peace. Not comfort. Not closure. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing you finally matched their silence with your own. That you finally drew the line they never thought you would. They wanted a provider. They got a man. They wanted obedience. They got absence. And in that absence, they learned something they never would have learned with me standing quietly in the corner. They learned who held the weight. They learned what it feels like when the quiet one stops carrying. So no, I didn't come back to punish anyone. I came back to rebuild. Not them. Me. And I did. I cook dinner for one now. Or for Kayla when she visits. I spend weekends fishing. Writing. Sitting in a chair I bought with my own money. In a house that bears my name. No one mocks me here. No one moves me to the back. No one forgets who paid for the roof. And if they ever ask again, if someone someday says, "Why didn't you stay?" I'll tell them the truth. Because I stayed too long. Because love without respect isn't family. It's servitude. Because the moment you're told you're nothing, you only have two choices. Become less, or leave. And I left. So tell me, was I wrong to walk away? Was I wrong to stop paying for a family that never let me inside? Or was this the only way left to say, I mattered, even if they didn't want me to?